Welcome to part 2 of the Chemistry of Life, our introduction to biochemistry, and in this part we're going to talk about the big molecules of life. So we already learned about atoms, elements, compounds, molecules and ions. So we learned that all matter is made up of atoms, and atoms can join to form molecules, and examples of molecules are water. Chemical formula of water is H2O, and carbon dioxide, CO2. Now, water and carbon dioxide are really small molecules. Each is made up of only 3 atoms, but the big molecules in biochemistry can be made up of hundreds, thousands, or even millions of atoms. So the big molecules we're going to look at are proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. I'm going to start off by talking about proteins. And to be honest, proteins are probably the favourite kinds of molecules of biochemists. They carry out many different functions in cells. So proteins are large molecules which are made up of long chains of amino acids joined together. So these amino acids are smaller molecules, and as this picture shows, the amino acids here are shown as circles. These amino acids join up together to form the whole, what we call the protein chain. And there are about 20 different kinds of amino acids in cells, and these join up in many different ways to make hundreds and thousands of different proteins that are found in cells. This is a picture of a protein, a diagram showing a protein, and all that you have to take from this is that the amino acid chains fold up in very particular ways, and the shape of the protein is important for its function. So proteins perform many important functions in cells. One example would be proteins in the cell membrane allow substances to enter or leave cells. This picture here shows a cell membrane. Don't be fooled, it's not showing up teeth and a mouth. This sheet here is one side of the membrane. This is the other side of the membrane. This is outside the cell, inside the cell, and going across the membrane are these proteins, and they can form channels which allow things to pass into the cell or out of the cell. Another very important function of proteins is as enzymes. Now, I've written enzymes here with 2 stars because this is maybe the most important word in biochemistry, enzyme. What is an enzyme? Enzymes are proteins which speed up chemical reactions in cells and in the body. In our cells and our bodies there are many thousands and thousands of chemical reactions happening, and these are speeded up, made possible by enzymes. I'll try to show this in a picture here. Supposing the cell needs this compound, which is made up of 2 smaller molecules joined together, and these 2 smaller molecules are found in the cell, but the enzyme, which is shown here, has a function of joining the molecules together to make the product here. So how the enzyme will work is that the 2 reactants, we call them, will join with the enzyme and come close together, and when they're there, a chemical bond can be formed between them, like this. And the enzyme is not used up or changed in any way by this reaction, so it can be used again and again in more reactions to make more product. We will learn more about enzymes later on, but for the moment all that we have to know is that enzymes are proteins, and they control essentially all the chemical reactions in living things, and this can include the digestion of food, or making of the chemicals which are important in the structure and the function of organisms. I want to move on now to talk about carbohydrates. So in this picture here, there are 3 carbohydrates. There's glucose here, which is a very simple sugar, and there's sucrose, which is the sugar that people add to tea or coffee, and the other carbohydrate, well, cellulose, which we get in wood and paper, comes of course from plant cell walls. Glucose and sucrose are small carbohydrate molecules. Cellulose is a much larger carbohydrate molecule. And large carbohydrate molecules are made up of many small units, many small carbohydrate molecules joined together. Another example of a large carbohydrate molecule is starch, which we find in rice or in bread. And in cells, carbohydrates are important in energy storage, both in plant and animal cells. And also in plants, cell walls are made up of carbohydrate, as we've said, cellulose. Moving on now to lipids. Now, lipids are a group of chemicals which include fats and oils. And in cells, the most important function of lipids is to form membranes. All of the membranes in cells, whether the cell membrane or the membrane around the nucleus or the endoplasmic reticulum, are formed of lipids. So this picture, which we've seen before, shows a cell membrane, and of course we noticed the proteins before, but the orange heads here and these black tails, which form the sheet which makes up the membrane, are lipid molecules. So this is a bottle of salad dressing. What does this have to do with lipids? Well, lipids, remember, include fats and oils. The salad dressing has an oil layer and usually something like a vinegar, sort of watery layer. And as we know, as you may have heard, oil and water don't mix very well. So the oil settles in the top and the water layer settles in the bottom. So what does this have to do with lipids and with cells? Now, the lipids which make up cell membranes have 2 parts. There's the head, which does interact favourably with water, and a tail, which does not interact favourably with water. So how these lipid molecules arrange themselves when they're in like a watery solution is that they arrange themselves with heads pointing out the way, interacting with the water around here, and the tails pointing in the way. So the head's out and the tail's in, and this kind of structure could extend a long way, like this and this. And this is what makes up the membrane. So just to go back to this picture again, this is showing the heads of the lipids on the outside of the cell and the inside of the cell, and the tails, which don't like to interact with the water, on the inside. So the big thing to remember is that lipids are very important because they form membranes. And we'll finish up this tour of biochemistry by talking about the nucleic acids. Now, there are 2 kinds of nucleic acids in cells: DNA, which we're all familiar with, and another molecule called RNA. And these are really important in storing genetic information and in using that information to make proteins. And DNA has this famous double helix structure, and that's shown in this picture here. It shows a little bit of the double helix structure. You can see it moving around here, and the other strand is here. DNA is found in the nuclei of eukaryotic cells, and a small amount is also found in mitochondria and chloroplasts also. And chromosomes are made up of DNA and protein. Genes are made up of DNA. Later on in the course we'll study in detail how DNA works in storing genetic information and how that genetic information is used to make proteins. So we've come to the end of this introduction to biochemistry. Just to check your own understanding, try these 3 tasks here.